Hi, welcome to Talks at Google. I'm Megan. Aggie Gund is an American philanthropist, art patron, collector, and advocate for arts education. She's president emerita of the Museum of Modern Art and chairman of its International Council. She's also chair emerita of MoMA PS1. In 2017, Gund founded the Art for Justice Fund to support criminal justice reform in the US. And her daughter, Catherine Gund, is founder and director of Aubin Pictures. She's an Emmy-nominated producer, director, writer, and activist. Her media work focuses on strategic and sustainable social transformation, racial justice, LGBT rights, arts and culture, HIV/AIDS and reproductive justice, and the environment. Today, we're here to discuss Aggie, a feature-length documentary that explores the nexus of art, race, and justice through the story of art collector and philanthropist Aggie Gund's life. In this film, Catherine focuses on her mother's journey to give viewers an understanding of the power of art to transform consciousness and inspire social change. Let's roll the trailer.
Yeah. What do you think of the movie? I think the movie is great. Which movie are you talking about?
Renowned philanthropist and art collector Aggie Gund stunned the art world when she sold Masterpiece by Roy Lichtenstein for $165 million in July and used the proceeds to start the Art for Justice Fund to combat mass incarceration.
We went to San Quentin. I had people come up to me and say, "What in the world did you want to do that for?" I think the case that struck me most was that of Eric Garner and that I Can't Breathe. I remember after he died, I just kept dreaming, I can't breathe.
Aggie understands that art makes it possible for us to have empathy, and that without empathy, there is no justice.
You have conjoined these two things, justice working through the arts.
I think of you as sort of the ultimate empath. You're somebody who really feels other people.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She laid bare wealth and privilege. Most people who have it pretend like they don't have it. And she said, I have this, and I want it to go to work. I want it to be so much bigger than one painting.
So I made questions today.
Why do you collect?
Have you ever cried in front of an artwork?
Do you want any of your grandchildren to be artists?
What is love?
Were you close with your mother?
Why aren't you a typical lady from Ohio?
How many of these conversations have you done?
What do you think you're going to do when you're grown up?
The giant question of life.
I heard you had sex with every artist that you collect. Is that true?
Wouldn't that have been fun?
Please welcome Agnes and Catherine Gund.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, I'm so happy you're here.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Welcome to Google, virtually.
Okay. We wish we could be there in person.
Next time. So this is an amazing film. It opens with Aggie selling Roy Lichtenstein's Masterpiece, and it's actually called Masterpiece, and it is a masterpiece, for $165 million to start the Art for Justice Fund. And the proceeds of this work, which was one of the highest grossing artworks ever sold, you took and used to start this amazing organization to reform the American criminal justice system. So this kind of is the crux of the start of the movie. So can you tell us about this decision? Why this piece? Why this cause?
Well, I long, felt that there wasn't justice in the incarceration system. And I felt I went to a movie which I didn't want to go to because I thought it would be too violent, of Ava DuVernay, who had the 13th. And I went with these people that have since become close friends, and I was just overwhelmed by how terrific it was. And I thought, these people that are going to jail, many of them for things that they wouldn't be going to jail for if they were white, for nothing that was really serious, and taking long terms and not being able to be released because they didn't have the money to pay bail, and all kinds of things that pointed to a very unjust system. And so I really wanted to, see justice redone, and I wanted to see these people that were in there, who I thought had probably much to offer to people on the outside, to be brought to justice. And then the bigger thing of justice in the way Blacks live is very, very apparent. And we've had many illustrations of it. We had many before the movie came out, but they've been, with the pinnacle being George Floyd. And I think this is the reason that I've been really most concerned about justice.
Wow. Well, I think that movie is incredible too, and an inspiration, and everyone should watch it. And keeping on this theme of justice, the theme of your philanthropy isn't just generosity, which you are super generous, but also justice. So what does justice sort of mean to you? What would justice look like today?
Well, justice would be a fair lifestyle for so many people that live in this country and outside it, that I happen to be, because of their color, second-class citizens, or not given as much attention and as much of a relationship with other people as we've been privileged to have. And so I thought this topic was, one that I really do care about. And I think it is on the brink of being solved in a way. I hope that our election brings it to a better place.
We'll see in a couple of weeks. So I agree with all of those sentiments about justice, and not to switch gears, but a little bit, a lot of this movie, it has a dual sort of message. One is justice, and one is art, and how they meld together. But Aggie, you fell in love with art as a high school student, and I loved watching this background about you and how this became a passion. But I'd love to hear just a little bit from you about your personal history and how you got into art and collecting.
Well, I went away to school, and at the school, I had a marvelous teacher that I've talked a lot about. So I would just say that she was somebody that really I was very close to when I was there, or as you were in a teacher-student relationship. We weren't that close, but we had the same ideas about seeing art, and she wanted me to see a lot of art other than what I could see through a class. And she always tried to teach to other things than the class. And I found out later when I went to graduate school that that was the way that it should be taught, that it should be taught on a basis of a lot of access to the artworks themselves. So she said, go to the Phillips, go to the Isabel Stewart Gardner, go to the Frick, the Morgan, all of which I've been lucky enough to visit a lot of times, and I really appreciate those places very much. And the shows they do are wonderful. I do love that, when you ask that question and Aggie's growth into being a collector and someone who sees the world through art, that she's done that by taking the time to be with art, so that it's not about a given artist or one piece of art, but it's just about constantly exposing yourself and taking the time and paying attention. I think that Aggie's always taught us to just pay attention, to really listen. I think her way of being with art is about listening. So I love that her teacher, who was really a mentor, and we know how important mentors are, that she helped Aggie know that that was a way to spend time, that was a way to be in your life.
And Kat, did that rub off on you, that philosophy and a love for art?
Well, certainly the love for art, but I definitely think that what I share is just an idea that everything is art and everything around me is art. And, we make things and our friends make things and we trade things. And, I think what really rubbed off was that Aggie prioritizes her relationships with artists, even over their art. Certainly over their art and over the institutions like museums, that it's really about what she can know and learn from other people. And I think both of us enjoy really big, beautiful communities that are made up primarily of artists, but certainly of people who understand the power of art.
And those conversations, a lot of those are in the film, which is so nice to sort of see that community come to life. And sort of in that spirit, Aggie, you are recognized for your robust support of artists, but particularly, women and people of color, which I think, again, is so relevant now and relevant to all of your work. But how did you know to do that so long ago? This isn't new for you. So how did that sort of happen for you?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky because I had I had a chance to go around, and I was not tied to one place. I could move in between them. I could travel abroad and things like that. So I could travel between Cleveland, where I lived, and in Ohio, which is, I think, a wonderful state, and hopefully they will win. I'm sorry to get off, but it is the most important thing of our moment. So you're right to keep going back to voting. And I could come to New York and did come to New York, and met many people that were involved with art early on. When I had lots of friends that were in the art world and knew the art world, and they were my age, and they've been wonderful people that I've known for many years. But you always said to me that you would, in that environment, often you would only see the men, certainly white male artists, and that you were always asking, where are the women, which you say in the film, that, and where are other people who are left out, like whose voices are missing? And I feel like that's actually been a really solid through line of Aggie's life, is to say who's not able to speak, who's unheard. And that included public school children, and that included women artists, and that includes people in prison. And she's always sort of got it's like her ear. It's like she's tuned to wonder where they are. Yeah. Well, we used to be very free in Soho. Now, looking back on it from this COVID disease, it doesn't seem like it was ever as lively as it was. But when we used to be in Soho and going around, when Soho was at its peak and didn't have stores in it, we used to spend, the whole day just going besides lunch, because we always had lunch too. And we saw all these artists, and we talked to the dealers and to other people looking at art, and it was a small group, which doesn't seem small now, but it was a wonderful group of art people, and some of the critics, like some of these favorite people of others, were down there, as well as other people buying art, and it was just a wonderful atmosphere because it was all very accessible, and but it was before the world had gotten to have loads of artists and loads of patrons of art. And
so were there women artists there at that time?
No.
How did you
very
find
few
out about
women? Because most dealers didn't show women, because they said to me, when I'd often ask them, I'd say, how come you don't have any women? Women don't sell. I mean, it just doesn't.
So how did you get the early pieces by women artists that you have? You go to their studios? How did you know? How did you find artists who weren't represented by that name?
Well, I had heard about them, but also I, just went and unearthed them if it was something that interested me or was important, that they might be famous. They weren't necessarily all that way, but I like women. I tried to convince some of the dealers to take more women, but as I said before, they have all sorts of excuses, mainly that they didn't sell.
Their value didn't increase.
But that's changed today a little bit, right?
Well, it's changed as it has with Black artists, because now, you see many Black artists. We just have two artists that we've bought pieces of, that we've given to the Museum of Modern Art, that are coming up for acquisition, and they're really great paintings.
But I think that's really key too, that I think a lot of us don't realize who aren't in that museum system, is that Aggie has persistently over decades been, as she just said, buying art, offering it to the museum, who then has to decide if they accept it or not. And then,
which in the beginning they often didn't.
They often didn't. And so it's, there are more women and people of color represented in the museums right now, but it's a long, slow road. And it takes persistence, and she'll never say it, but that's what she's been doing, is bringing artists, bringing attention to them, encouraging them to be able to have shows, and introducing their pieces into the collection, and often giving them the pieces.
It's a long road, and we are so happy that you started it so early, before it was trendy. Just to switch to the film a little bit, Aggie, you say at the beginning of the film, I hope this film won't be seen by too many people. Is that really true?
Well, I really didn't mean it the way it sounds. It sounds terrible, because I think Catherine did a very good job of a difficult subject, and not a subject that would be of interest to many people. But she made it, it may be a little long, but but she made it very interesting. And that wasn't me that made it interesting, but she just, like, she got Jack Shear to ask all the right questions, and she got her grandsons and granddaughter to be in there, and that was fabulous. But she brought in people that I really liked. There were many more that she.
Now you can see maybe what the challenge was, the central challenge of making this movie, which was not, in fact, supposed to be a portrait of a person, although it serves that purpose in obvious ways, but more to be about all of us and how we become the person we are, and what are the elements and experiences we have that influence us in that particular path. And I think, you know, I still wonder that, like, how did she become this person? And you asked, and we don't know. It's not like she doesn't know, but you and I know. Like, none of us really know, right? Like, what makes you hold the values that you believe in? Because even if you say who you're voting for, we'll give all these reasons, but those reasons only matter to you. And so I wanted to know how she became someone who would do this incredibly huge thing of selling this piece with the intention of investing in the imagination to end mass incarceration. Like, that's not something somebody had done before. So I do think there are things that she likes about the movie, which is good.
I do.
She didn't always.
I do like the way the movie's done.
But it was hard to film, as you can see. She doesn't like to be on camera. And so the central challenge really was, how do I make a movie about, you know, which is shining a light on someone whose part of their magic is that they don't like the light being shined on them, because there's all these obvious reasons traditionally it would get shined on her, and she doesn't want that. So I don't want to shine it on her in a way, but how can you get away from those great, I mean, the conversations in the car always crack me up, because there's so many more that aren't in there. You know, like when I asked her if she'd learned anything about herself while we were making the movie, she said, no. And I went to get out of the car and she said, oh, wait, I did learn one thing. I learned that you're very persistent.
Yeah. She was persistent in making the film.
Yeah.
So
it's true. It's all truth.
And Kat, did you learn anything about your mother through the film?
Well, that's interesting, because I, being very sort of analytical and, you know, meditative about lessons and whatnot in my life in general, thought, you know, I'm going to learn all these things. And then 3/4 of the way through, I was like, oh, I guess I really knew my mom really well, because I haven't learned anything new. I knew all these things. You know, I started thinking maybe she was asking everybody questions instead of answering questions just because she was trying to ruin the movie. That wasn't true. So I did learn about her asking questions as a way of engaging with the world, as a way to address her curiosity, her real deep curiosity. But then by the end of the film, and I would say actually maybe even in the time since we've been releasing it, and people have been watching it, and I've been hearing from people what they see, it does make me realize that, you know, you can't know about your parent everything they were doing. As a child, you're supposed to care about yourself. Like, the world revolves around you, and you want their attention to revolve around you. And so even though I knew she'd done all these things, I think there is a way that I just didn't fathom the amount, not the quantity, but the deep and vast quality of her interaction, and how she did that at the same time as raising 4 children. And because I'm trying to do that, and people in the film business say, oh, you know, if we weren't mothers, we'd have more time, we would have made more movies, we would have done this and that. And I don't see it as a loss. I think that everything she did, she was able to do because she was a mother, and that she wouldn't have necessarily done more or better if she hadn't been a mother. She would have done very different things. And the things she did are deeply impacted by that.
Wow. So you had a reluctant subject,
yes,
who's totally lovely though. But Kat, what was it like to make, you've made a lot of really interesting films on personal subject, but this film is particularly personal. So, what was that process like? Even when you decided to do it, did you say, oh, maybe, I don't know, this is really exposing my own family and myself?
Well, there's several parts of the answer to that, because one, I would say that in the way that I make movies, all of my films have been really personal to me.
Yep.
So, I think that we are co-creating the societies we want to live in, that we are doing the work together of creating these villages that raise our children together, that help, if you can see how collaborative, how long the credit list is, that, we really I work with people. And it's really the process, I think, that is the most personal and vulnerable making. end product of the film, I mean, I guess I never thought of it as that we were exposing ourselves. I think of it as a, there's a life and a community that I love, and a world that I love. And you see it in the film, in these conversations. And I thought that having these conversations, that Aggie being interviewed by her friends and family instead of by me, would show these different aspects of who Aggie is. And Raj Roy from the Museum of Modern Art, who I was speaking to last week about the movie, pointed out, he's also a mutual friend. He's in the film, right? And he's a friend both of mine and of Aggie's. And he pointed out that everyone who's in the film is also a friend of mine, and that he thought of the interlocutors as being representative of different parts of me, and that was my way of interacting with Aggie. And I think that sort of deeply embedded community and the things we share and the ways that we're different are what made the film feel like, well, if you know us, you know us. It's not like we were hiding something. So I sometimes I say it's because I'm a Virgo, like I can't lie anyway. So I don't think I'm like trying to create this world that's covering up something else. I think it's actually being able to genuinely share what the humanity that we all have in common is worth doing. And that what I want people to realize, some people have beautifully said about my mother, like, we need more Aggies in the world, right?
That is true.
And yet, my friend who's also in the film, Teresita Fernandez, the other day when someone said that, she said, I am Aggie. And that is what I want people to take away, is that this isn't about me and my family, and it's not about Aggie and her biography. It's really about you, right? Like, it's, you are Aggie, and what part of that are you going to access? Like, what part of your ability to make change and to be most vibrantly and fiercely involved in your own daily life, and the life of your community and the life of the world. Like, I feel like it's gotten very hard in COVID because we're just so pushed down and so stripped of all of our sort of, in many cases, people's basic needs of not just housing and food, but of being able to work and being able to socialize. And it, I think, causes people to think about what really does matter, what their bottom line purpose is, what they're going to do today.
Absolutely. I think COVID has forced that. And I think it's inspirational to see somebody who's so generous, because we can all be generous in our own ways. I'm also a Virgo, by the way. So that totally resonated with me. And speaking about sort of all of these interviews and all of these, go ahead.
She's going to say something about her being a Leo. I think Virgos love Leo. We love Leo. But us Virgos,
I do think Leo's the best sign.
See? Okay, so anyway.
Well, that's good. What do you think is the best about being a Leo?
Well, because they're the brightest and the strongest and
the most humble.
What my sister told me one time. She was talking about how she really knows the signs in the zodiac, and so she was telling me that she could always guess what somebody was after talking to them about 5 minutes. And so
it's too loud. Go ahead. So what did Louise say?
Well, she could tell that I was a Leo because she said Leos are very prideful, and so you are that personified. So that's what my sister does. So.
Which is funny because that's not a side that we see come out in the movie.
Yeah.
I love these conversations because that's how you get to know, look how adorable you guys are together. I just love it.
It's okay. Leos are, come on.
Yeah,
okay.
It's okay. It's fine.
So there were so many conversations in the film. There were a lot of questions that we never got the answers to. You teased some of those. We saw the trailer earlier. What is love? Have you ever cried in front of an artwork? why are you not a typical lady from Ohio? I think what's so interesting is, where did you get all the answers to these questions? How was it to edit all of that down? Because I almost want to see Aggie too. Is there going to be an Aggie sequel? Because, there's so much meat there.
I think she left. She's Aggie's with you on that, Megan. She'd like to see Aggie too, where all the other people who were in conversation with her. There are about 15 people, bless them, who did conversations with Aggie who didn't appear in the film. We had way too much footage, as you can see. And even the people who appear in the film often are there for a very short period of time. It's just one question. And the conversations were gorgeous. So we were we are taking little clips and putting them on the website. So there are a few extras you can already see. Some of Teresita and Darren Walker, and some extra scenes. So you see City Lansing and Craig Starr talking about Eva Hesse artwork, which is a particular one I love. There's more of Jack teasing Aggie about sex and love. And there'll be other ones that we'll put up. But, I think that it really, the questions to me, at one point I started writing down all the questions, because many more, obviously, even questions exist that aren't in the film. Not only the answers are missing. And I started this list of questions, and it said, questions you should ask your grandmother. And I should finish that list, because they are amazing questions. And to me, the answers aren't even as important as the fact that the conversation is taking place. I just don't think we talk to each other enough. We don't ask each other real questions about what we think love is. What do we think love is? We have very different that people do. And to get to have those conversations, I think is a real luxury. Yeah.
It's like the New York Times, questions to fall in love to. And I loved that. I think we all fell in love with Aggie a little bit by seeing the answers to a lot of these questions.
That's so funny. I just thought of that while I was answering your question. I was like, oh yeah, it's like that, where you're just supposed to, but that's exactly what it is. I think that was why it was such a big hit. It gave people an excuse, because otherwise, what are you getting at? And we don't have time, and we have to worry about the baby's diapers, or, whatever.
Right.
Reasons to get out of it. And instead, this was a real opportunity. And I didn't script any of the questions or any of the conversation. So I just said, it started with the kids, and I just said, you can talk to Nona for an hour. And they all wrote out around themes, and they asked her these questions. And then she was like, that wasn't so bad, because I was supposed to do the interviews. And when I did the first one, it just didn't work for us. So then I had to, and then we just started asking people. And then I thought, okay, I should make a movie. Because originally I was just collecting these little interviews, because I thought, for the archive.
Absolutely. Has your relationship with your mother changed over the years?
With me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. You
How has it changed?
Well, you're much more mature person. You've done much more, and you have a life that is definitely involved with your kids, which is wonderful, because they're wonderful kids, and you've created so many more things. I couldn't watch, Catherine knows this about me, but I couldn't watch one of her earlier films on Ron Athey, which was just, too difficult for me to watch. And I never really saw it, but now I think I could see it with a different eye than I used to have, because I've seen her work so thoroughly that I know them now.
Well, I love this dynamic. The film premiered at Sundance. I love Sundance. It's my happy place. But what was the reception like? How was that? I mean, it's a big deal to premiere at Sundance. And can you tell us a little bit about what's happening with all of these screenings during COVID? Because I know there's a lot of these virtual screenings. So I'm curious about what this is like.
Well, it was fun. It was a great trip as far as I was concerned. Not just the film coming out with the people that were there and the enthusiasm, and you know, it was before COVID, so it was wonderful to be able to go around and see things and be a part of something that was as, you know, prestigious as you say it was, and it was that way. We happened in on a lot of conversations that we didn't expect to, at least I didn't expect to. One of them was with the widow of Khashoggi. That was really interesting. And we happened to be there at the same time, so we met her and talked to her a little bit. And then we had great food, which I now, because I'm trying to lose weight, I think about all the time. But we went to Chinese place for, you know, over that period. We met all sorts of people. Gloria Steinem was doing her movie there, and we went to see her, and we had lots of talks about it. And there was a show of some of the works of art I've
that was
collected,
cool.
and we went to these people's house, and I bought even some art there, and it was wonderful.
It was amazing. All of those things. The show that she's talking about was really cool because we curated 25 pieces from her collection and had an exhibit during the festival.
Wow.
We did our panels within that space. We had our opening night party there, and it was amazing. Some of the artists, Iveria Simmons and Kathy Opie, were both there, and both had pieces in that show and came to and the kids all came, and board members of Aubin Pictures, my company is a not-profit, so there were a few of our great board members had come with us, and one of my sisters came, and it was really fun. And there's such a great vibe there because people are there because they love movies and they love art and they want to share in it. So everybody's just kind of, and because movies,
the ultimate person that was there was
Robert Redford, the darling Robert Redford, founded Sundance.
And he was a friend of my brother George, who was quite a movie buff.
Yes.
That loved movies and bought a lot of movies that nobody wanted to see.
I think
but they were from Eastern Europe, and he really got them before other people got them. So that was what was
He's
exciting.
known for smuggling them out of Czechoslovakia, along with hockey players.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he was on the board of Sundance for a time, and so he had been very close to Robert Redford, who is talk about a generous person and actually has so much in common with Aggie in terms of how they see the world, how they embrace people, and how they really stick to their principles and what they believe is just and fair, and work, as Ava says in the film, work to make it so. And the two of them, and actually John Cooper, who introduced the Aggie film on the first screening, he said, you know, I really think of Aggie and Bob as having a lot in common, of being similar. You know, they're both Aggies, they're both Bobs. And
I love that. We're all going to be Aggies now.
that'll be tapping into your agency, your ability to just do something, have an impact on your own life, honor your own subjectivity, and trust your intuition, educate your intuition to take you in the direction you want to go.
That's awesome. We will get to audience questions soon. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We know they're rolling in, but I have a couple more before we get there. I love that you did an art show in conjunction, and there's so much with this movie. We had talked about earlier, Kat, that this is bigger than just a film, that this has a life of its own because it's about so much more. But one question that I have is, you, Aggie and Kat, you've always had the courage to sort of collect artists before they get the stamp of approval. And of course now you collecting them is sort of a stamp of approval, but you know, you said you bought at Sundance. Are you still actively buying? Do you buy artists that don't have the stamp of approval yet? What's your process now in your collecting?
I seem to have ended my buying thing, but by selling this piece, that sort of made me, I changed what I did, but I bought quite a bit, but I buy it for museums. I don't buy them for myself. I bought maybe 20 things in the last year or so, but I bought, but
That's the end of buying.
Right, that was the end of buying.
That was the end of mine.
But they've mostly been for museums, as I say, and
it's amazing.
Pieces that they want and they want to have, rather than pieces that I would display or I'd have in the house. I still have, I look at the work I have, and I have Augustine and a Twombly and the living room and a Rothko and other things like that that are nobody would buy now. You know, they would buy for museums and things, but they wouldn't. It wouldn't be what was the current. But for current work, I buy mostly Black and women artists, and that was what we had at Sundance. Were those two categories that were in the show, and it was very little show. There's also a show up at Juilliard now, which is about 20 works of art that are from are mostly women and Blacks. So.
And it's, you know, one thing I thought was so interesting in the movie was seeing the makeup of your own family. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, if that, like how that sort of has influenced you to continue this path?
Well, it did have an influence. As I said, when I saw Ava's film, I began to really think more about the grandchildren I had. 6 out of the 12 are Black, and I really began to hone in on them in my mind more than actually seeing them. But I do get to see them quite a
But
bit.
I think it was a really powerful moment to when Trayvon Martin was murdered.
Right.
That we lived in a country where there was a president who stood up and said, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. And it was in that moment that things like, you know, Aggie's feeling of, oh my God, you know, and in the film we use that photo where she's with Kofi, one of my children, and he looks just like Trayvon. And I think to be able to have this community affirmation as opposed to the gaslighting that we're exposed to right now, that there's this affirmation from the president to her community, to her artists, to her family saying, this is a vulnerability and this is a fear that we share. It's not over there. It's right here and it's real. And I think that really influenced, because Trayvon was before 13th and Eric Garner.
And it really did affect me. And I'm still affected by things that, that were,
I wasn't going to do that again.
that were about people like LeBron James and what he's become an activist more than just a basketball player.
Maybe just the best basketball player ever alive. But yes, even more than that, he is beloved and he's amazing.
And he has worked, we've done some things that he's done now, or we've been involved with him by giving some money from Art for Justice and also on our own to things that he's been particularly interested in, especially in Florida, where we have the rights of those that have been incarcerated to come back and to be able to vote. And they were stopped with this because the Republican governor of Florida wanted them to
not be able to vote. So he
pay
insisted
for all
their fines and fees. And LeBron's been a great partner in that, in paying off fines and fees, because the people of Florida voted for the reenfranchisement of formerly incarcerated people, and they voted over 74% said that people should be allowed to vote once they've served their time, they've come home, they're citizens of this country, and so then this poll tax that was imposed. The leader who we've partnered with since the very beginning of Art for Justice is named Desmond Meade. Everyone should know him. He's just brilliant, and his organization is the Florida Rights and Restoration Coalition. And he got people organized, and LeBron came in, and Art for Justice and other people paid the fines and fees, and there are thousands of formerly incarcerated people who are now voting for the first time, many of them, and they're voting. They're voting.
Wow. And you're not biased about LeBron because you're from Ohio, right?
You're right. Yeah, that's why.
One of the radio shows in Cleveland was great about this a couple of weeks ago, and we had this whole long conversation about the film and everything else, and about Aggie and all these things she's done. And at the very end, he said, I do think your mom is really great, but the most important thing she's ever done was talk to Obama that night and told him to root for the Cavs. That's why they got according.
That was one of my favorite moments. I loved seeing that. I'm a big basketball fan as well. All right, we're going to take an audience question from Ginny Johnson. Do you think your major gift has influenced other major, maybe more traditional, either education endowment givers to consider more grassroots anti-racist causes?
I do. I really think that it was a quieter subject, but a subject that has had long-standing, and some of the organizations we work with have been 40 years old, older than that, and they've been very important. But people didn't pay as much attention to incarcerated people, and it certainly wasn't on everybody's list of where you should give money. So this has opened up something, and we've had many other people that are involved
that are
now.
joining us in Art for Justice. Aggie at the very beginning said, I'm doing this and I want other people to join me, specifically around Art for Justice and ending mass incarceration. Over 30 people did, our founding donors. And ever since there's been more, but the bigger question, which I really love that was just asked, is really about how the philanthropy is different. And there's several ways that we can change if we support movement building, if we support communities, if we really look at sustainable change and power sharing. The Art for Justice Fund is a 5-year spend down, which means that all the money gets put out into the community within 5 years instead of this long endowment, as Jenny pointed out. That it's not about creating an endowment and another institution and on jobs and bureaucracy and whatever. It's actually about ending mass incarceration, and the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And the idea was to get the money out so that they also became closest to the resources to realize their visions. And I think that is a different style, and it's definitely picking up. I mean, thank God this summer, which both revealed and exacerbated the problems and the legacy of the way racism is manifested, the way slavery is manifested in our current day, that I think there are really great people. Mackenzie Scott, who just gave $1 billion to it is an incredible model. I mean, and that's just the beginning, I'm sure. Susan Sandler has also just given $200 million or two. I don't quote me on the amount. But people are stepping up and saying, I'm not going to just do $50 or whatever is the $50 version for you. I'm not just going to give a little bit here and there. I'm actually going to resource the movement. And that way, no matter what happens in 2 weeks, we have a movement, we have a path forward. And the artists, the other thing that's different for Art for Justice is doing the art and the activism together. Really recognizing that that's the richest, most powerful way to move the needle.
That's what it takes, and picking your causes and really investing deeply in those instead of sort of investing in a lot of different pots probably does move the needle. And so,
but also, as she said, not doing endowments education, the way I read that part of her question was saying, that a lot of privileged people get to go to very fancy schools and then they turn around and give money to those same schools instead of saying, where are the people who don't have resources going to school, and how are we going to shore up those environments?
Absolutely. And just to mention, what you've done in terms of art in the schools, with studio in a school for so many years, helping over 1 million kids, I believe it is, over the last 40 years. So I just want to point that out, that this is not your first endeavor in going deep into a project.
Want to say something about their voice?
The studio has expanded some from when it was. We have now 2 divisions to it: the New York City program and the Institute, which is around in different cities. And we're just going to Chicago and Baltimore. Hopefully, they will be added to the ones we have now, which are about 5.
But talk about why you love being in the classroom with the kids.
Well, I love, because the way it's structured is they begin the class with the artist who is there, showing them how to do it and showing them materials that they use and explaining why they are using them, and having some questions asked by the kids, which they then have the lesson, and they do their thing, and then they come back and show the pieces. They show what they've done and talk about that, and they have a lot of addressing of the student, and in ways that they don't get in many of their other classes, because they're never asked, well, what do you think about this? How does this work? What happens when you mix yellow and what is it? Red. But no, but it changes colors completely. And they really like to speak and have somebody care about what they've said. And they're very generous with each other in picking the thing. The person that is
sharing their work,
says that he can pick somebody to talk, and when the person's picked, they really say the most generous things about other people's work.
Wow.
So it's really a sharing, and you keep thinking, this can't be happening, because you don't expect children. I didn't ever expect all these children to be so thoughtful of the others, but that's what it
creates. Yeah, it's a beautiful program.
Wow. All right. How about another question from the audience? From JC, Aggie, how has COVID impacted the way you see art, artists, exhibition programs? What do you see the future of galleries, museums, auction houses, and how they present their program to the public?
I do think it will make everybody change the way they do things, because it's lasted so much longer than I ever dreamed it would. And I think it has changed some ways of people expressing themselves and dealing with other people, and dealing with things that have to have a movement, that should be having a movement. And I think COVID has changed a lot, and I don't know whether we'll get back to doing things the way we did before. But people are so inventive and creative that they will come out of this, I think, they're making many more changes than we ever could have imagined in the way we live and what we do. That doesn't mean that I'm not eager, and there's somebody else that keeps saying this in our ear that we see every day, not for much longer, hopefully. And he keeps saying, you know, we've got to get back to work. So,
oh, yeah, we're going to get past him.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear what, yeah, we do. And we need to, you know, we need to reopen really responsibly. Nobody's saying we don't want to reopen, but we have to do it safely. And I think it'll be interesting what good things we can take from the changes that have happened now, not least of them looking at ways to get people out of prisons and jails, which are,
perfect.
You know.
And
okay, we're going to take one more.
Younger people too.
Oh, great, Angela.
And I think this is a good one to end on. How can we help out with Art for Justice?
I think there's so many ways. I mean, obviously, it started as a philanthropic endeavor. It's a fund. So all money that is donated to Art for Justice goes straight to the field, because the Ford Foundation has generously partnered with us and Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, and they cover all the staffing and the administration fees. So all money comes in, goes out. And the good news, Angela, is that we have so many people, including artists, starting with Mark Bradford, who just stepped up and gave a full edition to sell to benefit Art for Justice, and raised $1 million for Art for Justice
of a print.
And now Julie Maritou and Mark DeSuvero and Jeff Koons and even some of our fellows, Titus Gaffar and Dwayne Betts, are giving pieces that and money, so that we are looking at having a 6th year. So this is very exciting for us, because it means that the system we created, which honors and elevates artists and activists working together, unites them in their work and their visions. And so we'll be able to do that for 1 additional year. So we are looking, I think we've raised about 15 million for that year, and we're looking to have 20 million. But I would say on a much bigger scale, that isn't only about the philanthropic side, that it is about educating yourself about the system, the history of the system, whether it's the books Aggie read, The New Jim Crow, Just Mercy. She loves Isabel Wilkerson. People should check out her newest book, Cast. That it really, you know, whether you read some James Baldwin, just read, educate yourself, so that you can actually figure out for yourself what you need to do that will change the system and make it more humane. As Aggie started at the beginning of this, the people inside, the people we're not hearing from, anytime people are literally marginalized, those are voices and brilliance that we're missing out on, that everyone else is missing out on. And we need to reintegrate those voices and elevate the voices we haven't heard, whether they're artistic or scientific or teachers, whoever, all the people. I mean, we have over 2 million people in prisons and jails in this country. That's a lot of parents, fathers and mothers and coaches and teachers and scientists and artists who are not able to contribute to all of our well-being.
Well, we are so grateful for you being here today, talking about these really important causes. And I just want to end by saying there's some really great things on aggiefilm.com, including this card game that Kat is showing off, which will be available in April. There's a catalog of all the work shown in the movie from Aggie's collection. There's a discussion guide. And most importantly, you can watch the film. So Aggie is available to stream on Google Play Movies and various other platforms and virtual screenings. Again, go to aggiefilm.com to learn more. And I can't thank you enough for being here. And hopefully we'll see you soon in person.
Thank you so much, Megan. Really,
bye.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.